Annual CI Real Estate Conclave. We do this annually, and every year we've had a lot of new learnings and which we take back in CI. Some of it is work with the government, some with the states, and we'll end up implementing many of those. I hope we can achieve the same today. We'd love everyone to participate. I'd like to welcome all the dignitaries on the dais and all of you here. In terms of backdrop, we're going through a very interesting time in the global economy where we have seen inflation increase because of all the COVID money the Western world has been releasing and introduced, which has caused significant amount of inflation in the Western world. Interestingly, India did not take that stand, and therefore we have not seen the impact of inflation, and therefore our economy has been far more resilient than many of the countries. While the West is still talking about going into recession, some countries have already gone into recession, India is still it is the fastest growing large economies in the world and expected to grow at around 6.5% this year. The other interesting feat we've achieved is India has become the largest number of people with 1.4 billion people. We've gone ahead of China. More importantly, we have the highest number of young population which is joining the workforce. So this is what they call the Goldilocks period for the population, where the maximum number of people are coming into the workforce. And that's an opportunity for us, for India. And more importantly, it's an opportunity because they're all potential buyers of real estate in the next few years. Opportunity, we've seen significant growth is on the warehousing space. More manufacturing is also moving into industrial space. Both these two are new sunrise sectors where we've seen a lot of international and domestic players coming in. All in all, we're seeing significant amount of growth in the real estate space across newer opportunities. It's phenomenal opportunity for employment. This is a year which we feel is not only the year for India, but the decade for India. This is really the time for India. I'd like to welcome you all with all of this.
Since most of us here, the delegates are from the NCR region, there's no introduction needed for DLF. And we are fortunate to have Mr. Sriram Khattar, Managing Director, Rental Business, DLF, to give us a perspective overall about the rental business across the country, and also how the NCR region is doing. Mr. Khattar, please.
Wish to extend greetings to Mr. Manoj Joshi, Honorable Secretary, distinguished members of CII, and respected colleagues. One thing I have learned today, Neil, is to exchange notes before the meeting, because you are the chairman and you take the prerogative of saying first. And therefore, I need to be careful on what I say after that. The last few years have been completely unprecedented for the globe as a whole. I think it's been very, very challenging for real estate developers, office goers, shoppers, and all of us. The pandemic changed the way business was run and resulted in shifts which reshaped the conduct of business across sectors. However, India's and our spirit of can-do and the deft handling of the government of India, especially the massive vaccination drive and the steering of the economy, is truly praiseworthy. I must also commend the leaders in the corporate houses who demonstrated exceptional leadership and resilience and helped steer the economy to where it is today. Over the years, the Government of India has introduced multiple economic and structural reforms which have laid a very strong foundation for growth of India as a country and India as an economy. The few examples of this are the Real Estate Regulation Act, the GST, the framework for REIT, and the digitization of land records. India has now emerged as a beacon of hope and prosperity in a world of high inflation, elevated interest rates, and clouds of recession. Just the fact that the Indian economy broke through the wheel of global uncertainty to clock a robust growth rate stands testament to the resilience of the Indian story. About a decade ago, India's GDP was the 11th largest in the world, and now it is the 5th largest. IMF World Economic Outlook forecasts that by 27-28, we will be the third largest economy, surpassing Germany and Japan. And these are no small feats. I think I personally look forward with a lot of optimism of the growth of the Indian economy. India has the largest number of young, English-speaking, tech-savvy population which is growing and is available at a fraction of cost of what they would be available in the developed markets. At the same time, India has the capability and has demonstrated that it can provide global quality real estate at a fraction of a cost where what the developed countries do. And this becomes a compelling reason for international companies, global capability centers, etc., who want to outsource work to India. Yes, we will continue to have competition from some of the smaller economies, but the scale of what we provide is not matched by any other economy in the world. Thus, as an offshore destination, India's will gather momentum, resulting in demand for grade A++ office spaces in India. I'm just pleased to share that last year, India overtook the US in terms of annual commercial leasing. Demand for IT SEZ remains subdued due to the changes in the direct tax laws which became effective in 2020. The Honorable Finance Minister had announced the introduction of the Development of Enterprises and Hubs Bill, DESH as we call it, which would provide flexibility in leasing SEZ spaces and resulted in space take-up in SEZs. We, through CII and through other industry forums, have been working with the Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance to bring in this amendment or some basic amendments as quickly as possible. I would take the liberty of requesting the Honorable Secretary, Mr. Joshi, to please urge his colleagues in the Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance to expedite this. In retail, the Indian retail story has evolved as one of the most dynamic and fast-paced industries, accounting for more than 10% of the country's GDP. As the world's fifth largest global retail destination, the retail business has been tremendously dynamic and has bounced back strongly after the pandemic. The rising income levels, the growing middle class, the aspirational middle class, and the strong economic growth over the next few years augurs very well for the growth of the retail industry. Within the retail industry, organized retail segment grew at 18% in FY23 compared to the pre-pandemic period. About 60 shopping malls encompassing around 25 million square feet will come up in the next few years. And this is a rate faster than the rate of the growth of the retail industry and a testament to organized retail. The residential real estate markets in India have had astounding growth in 2022, setting new sales by growing by 68% year on year. India's housing sales surged 151% in Q1 of 23. I can't resist myself from sharing that DRF's latest launch, the Arbor in Gurgaon, sold about 1,100 apartments in 3 days with a total sales value of about 8,000 crores. The prospect and future of real estate looks bright and positive, especially for companies which deliver quality and at the same time look at sustainability and ESG. Given the impact that our sector has on ESG goals of our country, we must act as change agents to ensure sustainable development in a socially equitable manner. It has become a business and governance imperative for companies and governments alike. The modern mantra for business is social inclusiveness, adherence to ethical and legal norms, and balancing and giving back what we take or borrow from nature. The government has taken a number of steps in the last budget on this front and is aiding organizations through both policies as well as initiatives. At DLF, in our own humble way, we have contributed to the cause of environmental sustainability and business impact of green buildings. I'm very glad to share with all of you that DLF is now got 40 million square feet of LEED Platinum space under the US Green Business Council, the largest in the world. We at the same time have the largest volume under the US Green Business Council LEED Zero for water certification. This is about 35 odd million. We are also recognized as a member and the only real estate developer to be recognized in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for the emerging markets. I would now end my address by making an impassioned appeal to you and our distinguished guests to continue with the high quality of real estate developments and the ESG initiatives that are already taking place globally to make the
Acknowledge the presence of Mr. Ajoy Mehta, Chairman RERA, and Mr. Kamlesh Vashne, Joint Secretary in Ministry of Finance, in the audience. They'll be joining us in the subsequent sessions. May I now call upon Mr. Anshuman Magazine. He has been a great supporter of this conclave, and he has been the past chairman, CII Northern Region, and chairman and CEO of India, Southeast Asia, Middle East and Africa, CDRE. Please.
I just was thinking, there is so much being talked about what's happening, but one of the things which really always comes to my mind is that we are fortunate that we are in India. This was not the case, of course, several years back. There is so much happening in the economy, and today's conference, which says Indian real estate engine of new economic growth. And I truly believe real estate will be one of the major engines of the economic growth for us. India is, of course, the fastest growing economy in the world. But what are the drivers? Our biggest strength that we're not only flying on one engine, consumption, government expenditure, private investment, export expansion are all the other engines which are going to drive our economy. Of course, you all know young skilled workforce is unparalleled what we have, and most importantly at a competitive cost. Technology, India is a technology hub, well proven. If China is the factory of the world, I always say that India is the technology hub of the world. And we really, because of our numbers, our track record, don't have much competition. There will be several countries together will be competing with India, but we have unparalleled scale and we will continue to remain technology hub of the world. Of course, China plus one is going to help us. Digitization, what is happening in India is, again, I would say, is unparalleled. We are really jumping a few loops in technology. Simple things, I was just other day at the airport and, I just put my phone, this Digi Yatra. It took me 7 minutes to really cross the gates because there was no intervention, Most of the airports internationally do not have this. It was just magic, and even now for me it's difficult to get adopted to technology, but even I could do it without any intervention, just going through the airport straight. All the payment gateways, Paytm, the whole efficiency on the financial systems. Today, someone was telling me that even if you want to buy peanuts from, from a vendor on the roadside, there is Paytm, Now these things, there's a quote I came across, which was, from someone called Bob Stenfeld from McKinsey. And he said, I fully believe this can be not just India's decade, but also we are so far behind in everything. If you look at real estate also, one end there's a huge supply of real estate, but if you look at our size of our economy, more importantly, number of people we have, in every parameter per capita, be it office, retail, industrial, we are far, far behind is we are still, it's a small percentage. Therefore, for next several decades, we will grow. And it's really, again, we are fortunate to be in a country where we will see growth for so many years, And finally, the infrastructure is visible. Highways, airports, all these years, a lot of infrastructure still has to come in, but all the connectivity with highways will have a huge impact on real estate. More land will be released, more land will come for development, all the cities which are coming up, connecting better, will do a huge, will make a big change. I'll just give very quickly some stats. What has happened only in the first quarter of this year. In residential, 78,000 units were sold, but 81,000 new supply came in. In office space, 12.6 million square feet of office was taken up only in the first quarter this year. Another 11.5 million came in. Now this 12.5 million square feet was 9% more than what was taken up last year at the same time. But what was interesting was, normally our office market, if you look at in India, all the major cities, the occupants are multinational companies. This is really for the first time that almost 48% of the companies taking office space were domestic companies, now, which is a major change and has never happened before, And this itself will be a driver if our domestic companies occupy or expand, which also means employment, along with the multinationals. And India will, of course, the large numbers will be still, because as most of the occupiers are large corporates, global corporates. But with the addition of the Indian companies coming in, this will really accelerate our growth in the office sector. In industrial and logistics, there was 26% growth over same period last year. Retail saw 130% growth for the same period last year. Of course, both of them with a low base, that's why the percentages are higher. And Neil mentioned data center. 50% increase in data center development is expected this year compared to last year. Of course, again from a low base, but this whole point I was making earlier, that we are so far behind, our base is still so low, that we will see huge percentage increases in every sector of real estate going forward, And of course, data center will also be helped by 5G, which is being rolled out, I believe, soon. And that will make our country more competitive compared to many others. So just to conclude, what would really keep the real estate going, or what would even make it attractive in India? I think some of the new things, what I'm seeing is development or expansion in tier 2, tier 3 towns. I must say, for last 25 years, there's been discussion happening, is the next big story in the tier 2, tier 3 towns. Believe me, for last 20-25 years, there's not much happening there. I've never seen the growth, what I've seen since last 1 or 2 years, what is happening in tier 2, 3 towns before. And it has been driven, if you look at real estate, it's really primarily been driven by retail. All the retailers are expanding to these towns, industrial and logistics, obviously. Of course, residential to a lesser extent. And we will continue to see this growth as infrastructure improves in these tier 2, tier 3 towns, both physical infrastructure, social infrastructure. We will see talent, hopefully willing to stay back because of that, jobs being created there. So in real estate, those tier 2 and tier 3 cities would be one of the engines of growth going forward. Of course, within the real estate sector, the major change has been institutions coming in, institution investment coming in, corporates coming in and owning real estate. The REIT structure you mentioned, Neil mentioned, there are 4. The latest one has been a first retail REIT which has come in. And sometimes what is not understood is, why do we need REIT? The REIT structure, the biggest attraction, of course, people talk about retail investors can buy real estate, but the number one reason why a REIT structure makes a huge difference to a real estate industry is that it provides exit to institutional money coming in. It provides exit to funding which is coming into real estate. And with the 4 successful REIT, we expect a few more to come in, but huge amount of liquidity funds globally are sitting out there. In spite of a slowdown, in spite of all the gloom and doom, sovereign funds, private equity funds, endowment funds, there are trillions of dollars sitting out there which can come into India. And something like a REIT, one of the reasons REIT structure does encourage them to come in. So I do expect more money to come in the real estate sector from the institutions, both foreign and domestic. Is taking off in a big way. Both hospitals, diagnostic centers, there's a lot of movement there. Finally, the hotels, which after COVID, they were struggling, and we've seen after several years in the hospitality, in the hotel sector, there's movement happening, there's expansion happening. I mentioned industrial logistics, data center. India has GCCs, global capability centers. Currently, 40 billion revenue comes from these GCCs, and it provides employment to 1.38 million people. In next 3 to 5 years, 100 more GCCs are expected to be developed in India. So you can imagine, and there's always a cycle. But in India, I feel we will continue to grow. Of course, there will be cycles, so we can't say this is a perpetual growth. As any economic cycle, business cycle, or real estate, there will be cycles, but we will see growth for many years to come. So we are in a good place, and thank you. And I hope today there are some good sessions going forward. They'll be informative, and there is a discussion on RERA, which I feel one of the game changers for our industry has been RERA. It sometimes does not get enough credit for making real estate industry, I would say, more accountable, transparent, and has encouraged investments to come to the real estate industry, and there will be a discussion.
Request you to please warm up and clap loudly for everyone. And now we have our chief guest, Mr. Manoj Joshi, Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, delivering his special address. Please, once again.
Good morning. Dignitaries on the dais and friends. I would like to speak on 2 topics. One is finance and other is urban planning, and in the context of Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. Yesterday, Honorable Prime Minister inaugurated did dedication ceremony for new Parliament building. In last 28 months, we were able to construct that building, which considering the complexity of building and the detailing, I don't think in India we have ever done construction like that. It opened up our understanding of construction industry. We had been part of construction industry many times, but never in so much of detail. To finish a building in 28 months of this kind, the amount of involvement which we got into this construction or other constructions which we are doing in Central Vista opened up us to realize that, yes, when we engage a contractor is another PMC sort of a thing, which where the profit varies. Normally in government, when you appoint a CPWD or NBSCC as a PMC, their margin is fixed. They don't lose money. But in case of contractor, yes, they do lose money or make profit. But other than that, they just have 40, 50 staff, and rest of the work is done by someone else. All these SMEs, whether in service sector or in material supply, they play the most important role. We didn't know that involvement was so much. Like say Tata Projects or L&T or someone is doing work for us, they hardly have any staff. So entire staff comes from either the manpower provider or the works they do directly. Concrete work, again the manpower comes from completely different sources. And then all these vendors who do the interior works and plumbing and AC and all. And then you realize that how difficult it is for those vendors to work. The contractor doesn't provide the payment for a few months after the supplier, normally 4 months to 5 months, and the working capital becomes a big problem. So even if you make the payment to contractor doesn't make the payment to the vendors. And one of the reasons for delay in most of the construction projects is the cash flow issues. So one is the commercials, deciding what rate the work to do, and then the payments. And the vendor also doesn't go to the bank to take credit. Neither the contractor goes to the bank to take credit. So everyone wants to work on when say a developer gives the money to a contractor, they want to work on a developer's money. Contractor doesn't take a credit. The vendor doesn't take a credit. So everyone works on that limited cash flow which is coming either in case of government contract from advance or payments which government makes, or in case of developers, I suppose the money which you have taken from the homeowner or the commercial real estate sometimes. So it varies how the source of money is coming. So there is no bank finance from supplier to the entire supply chain. And that leads to delays, that leads to higher cost, inefficiencies, and the project which should get completed in 3 years will take 5 years, also 2 years to 3 years. So are we helping our economy by not providing finance to such an important segment of our economy? Probably we are hurting far more. We have had black sheeps in this sector, and probably that guides our entire prudential policy of whether finance should go in this sector or not. So everyone agrees that finance is required in this sector, but because of those black sheeps, everyone is scared of taking action forward. In general, our banking industry makes a policy to treat everyone same. A good borrower, bad borrower. So if you go to the market and borrow, not through the banking system, probably the market would differentiate vastly between a good borrower and bad borrower. But since we have more of a public sector banking industry, our appraisal systems are not so sharp. So the best borrower will get something and the worst borrower will get slightly more than that interest rate. So our inability to differentiate between the bad and projects and good projects, same happens in real estate sector. Because of few bad projects or few bad borrowers, we brand the entire sector as bad case for finance, and we don't liberalize the finance to this sector. I think there is some work which this sector also needs to do as to how do the Indian banking system, which is predominantly public sector, with its inherent benefit, pros and cons. Cons is, downside is appraisal is not as sharp, a differentiation in the borrowers. So how do we help that? So that RBI, when it comes up with the policy, is also able to lay down norms where the bad lending doesn't take place too much. Obviously, within limits, projects would go bad, borrowers would go bad. But I think the sector needs to work on that as to how do we enable that differentiation between good projects and bad projects. Rating is one way, past performance is another way, but we don't have a framework as of now. So we need to, unless we provide a credible framework to the regulators, I don't think that's going to happen too much in the finance, and whether it's developers or the contractors and vendors and all the SMEs who are there. The life for a SME supplying to a big contractor or to a developer is much more difficult than your life. You must realize how difficult you must be. I don't know how many of you are dealing with them, because you again would be dealing with a few contractors, large contractors. But it's a very, very important sector and the eye-opener for us. That if we are discussing yesterday, what should we do in CPWD system or NBCCs or other construction agencies or metros which we deal with, in their payment system so that the money goes to the vendors. So even if we make the payment to a contractor, contractor is not passing it on to the vendors. We provide 20% advance in all the government projects, that money doesn't go to the vendors. It just finances overall the contractor. Contractor probably takes 4 months or 5 months to pass on the funds to the vendor after the supply. So what type of system we evolve so that the payment to vendors go? Some we can make directly payment to the vendors. How do we bring formality more into the SMEs involvement in our projects? So yes, finance has been an eye-opener for us in Central Vista project, which we never thought would reveal these many things to us. The second area which the government plays a very, very important role, and when we talk about tier 2, tier 3 cities, is the urban planning. Large cities still have some sort of urban planning, a better road network, and the norms for where the construction would come up, whether you do a classical town planning scheme or a township model which you see in Gurgaon, or whatever Noida, Greater Noida does a land acquisition model and then doing the layout planning and go. But when you go to the tier 2 cities or tier 3 cities, whether it's in Ghaziabad or other places, you don't find much of urban planning. And the more haphazard development takes place, the less the space for you people. The large developers or medium-sized developers, there is very little space unless there is an organized urban planning. Whether large malls or large office spaces along with the residences, you need either a township model or a town planning scheme model. So our ministry, along with finance ministry, I think last 2 years we have been working on this sector. We had a Honorable Prime Minister has started this Chief Secretary's conference for last 2 years. We already had 2. The first one of the topics we focused was urban planning. And since then, we have been pushing urban planning and also the issues of HR in urban local bodies and finances of local bodies. So as part of urban planning, last year's budget provided a 6,000 crore rupees fund to the states as an incentive to nudge them to move towards urban planning. We distributed 5,500 crore rupees. This is a 50-year interest-free loan to the states for capital investment. So it's like a grant, but given as a 50-year interest-free loan. So last year we asked the states to carry out certain reforms. So whichever states did that, we provided them starting from 300, 400 crore rupees to 500, 600, 700 crore rupees. For changes in the bylaws or building bylaws, where there is a lot of discrepancies or there are inconsistencies, or you are asking the open area as you are asking, they are higher than what the taxes are on the cars. So a lot of states carried out the reforms. This year, we increased the amount to 15,000 crore rupees incentive for the states to carry out urban planning reforms, and another 5,000 crore for financing of urban local bodies in terms of municipal bonds or changes in user charges or property tax rates and or collection systems. So 20,000 crore is being provided this year. So urban planning is an area we are trying to nudge the states to do, and this incentive is working in the right direction for states to. This time, most of the money we are putting them to do town planning schemes in the states. In the cities, the more number of town planning schemes that we do, the more funds we give to them. So probably whatever they spend on that or the effort they make, we probably give them 10 times the money of that to them. So the city gets say 200 crore rupees to do a town planning scheme. It's a good enough incentive for them to make that effort. So 20,000 crore is a large amount to nudge them on that. So tier 2, tier 3 cities, yes, urban planning is non-existent. Some Gujarat cities you find. Maharashtra was a pioneer Bombay state and then left it. Then you find all these township schemes in Haryana. that the developer comes with a 20-acre, 30-acre plot, and if there is a certain road width, then the developer gets the approval to do that small township or 20-acre, 10-acre townships. But if the municipal urban local body or development authority is good enough to lay down a master plan and work out a way to get the master plan road land to come to the government so that the road network can be laid down. Most of the tier 2, tier 3 cities master plan is made and not implemented. So if the large developer is coming, they would leave out the space for the road and not do the construction. But small construction takes place, and then after some time, we are not able to construct that road. So we are nudging the states that whatever master plan roads they are putting in, they should have a mechanism to get that land for the roads. Whether it's a model that they do it in Rajasthan, Jaipur, they give compensation land along the road of about 25% and get the land for the road, because government can't afford to acquire the land for roads now. Or you do a town planning scheme, or the developer leaves on its own and the government constructs the road on that. So I think for tier 2, tier 3 cities, urban planning is very, very important, and where the growth is happening or the outskirts of large cities. For real estate sector, urban planning is the difference between a FSR development and a small developer coming, or a small contractors coming, or a large developer and organized development taking place. So this is a very high priority area for government, and Honorable Prime Minister also, every occasion he keeps CIA and real estate sector, we have been, our ministry has been working with them for quite some time, and Mr. Ajay Mehta sitting on a chair which has seen very good work in last 7 years in the country. A lot more needs to be done. So we had removed the big hurdle of outright cheating. Now the small cheating continues, which in Mumbai they work on, a lot of cities they are working on, some cities they are not able to work on because the bigger problems continue. So quality of real estate developers has improved. The more discipline the government forces you, the improvement takes place. But I think the problem in NCR region of not getting OCCC continues. The home buyer doesn't get whatever was promised in the beginning, and finally what you get that continues to be a different. So it's like when you go into Sadar Bazaar to buy some goods. If there is an honest trader who is trying to charge you GST and everything, there's no way that trader can do business, because there are 20 other traders who are not charging it. And so same goes into the real estate sector. If there is a discipline imposed from the regulatory side on everyone to adhere to whatever was promised, or certain standards in construction, certain standards in delivery, then that forces everyone to do it. Then the cost cutting doesn't give higher profits to someone. So that is the role of the regulatory agency, and happy that last 7 years a lot of improvement has happened, and it continues to happening. But still, I think a lot of RERAs need to further step up their effort on looking from the consumer perspective, not just that you have booked a house and finally you get a house, but what you had booked and what you are getting, that area becomes more and more important. But yeah, coming back to first topic, finance probably is a difference between, if you want builder to developer to construct the house and then offer it to buyer, probably that would be the ideal scenario, and that can only happen when finance is available. Otherwise, if it's the home buyer which is providing the finance, there would always be a variation in over the 3-year period or 4-year period when the booking is made and the home is delivered, between what was promised and what is delivered. The market changes a lot. For 4 years to hold constant the price, everything is very, very difficult for any developer. So if we want a really professional market, we need to provide finance to this industry and not the home buyer providing entire finance. That model needs to change, and I think the sector needs to enable regulators through a better rating system or a better appraisal system to enable that happen. Otherwise, all of you would be treated as bad as, or as good as the worst person in the group.
Interesting comments. Sriram mentioned about the whole commercial and retail business coming up and the help the whole SEZ sector needs, which is required with the changes with the sunset policy in SEZ. And Shuman raised some very interesting points on what's happening on the various real estate markets. But also what's interesting is what's happening on the global markets and how India is shaping up. And Mr. Manoj Joshi, has raised very interesting points. In fact, I should have covered it, what's happening on the whole urban planning, urbanization. Very interesting. The regulatory side is will help. But I think the one learning for us as an industry is how they've remarkably pulled off this whole national capital region changes which are taking place on the new parliament building which was inaugurated yesterday, the new office buildings which are being built. And actually it's a learning and a case study for us on urban rejuvenation. And I request Honorable Secretary to maybe take and organize a visit for us to do a presentation, because it's very difficult to do redevelopment. It's much easier to do a greenfield development, and the challenges they faced have been remarkable the way they've achieved it. It's kept pollution down without disruption to the city infrastructure. We're seeing the new Pragati Maidan and Dwarka, this convention being held.
I would also request the speakers to the next session. Modi, Executive.